Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Alazouzi from easymedicaldevice.com, and today we'll talk again about CAPA. We had Vincent Cafizo before talking about CAPA, more about what is corrective action, preventive action, etc., correction. Today we'll talk more about what are the main issues about CAPA. So this is mainly something that I know that everybody struggles with. So it's why let's maybe tackle some of those issues. There are more, but let's go through the three most known issues about CAPA. And for that, I have with me Georg Digel, which is the principal engineer at Olympus. So George, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thanks, Munir. It's great to be here. As you said, I'm a principal engineer at Olympus, and the funny thing is that a year ago I started to post a lot about NC and CAPA management.
Exactly.
We focus on medical devices, and I thought it's a horrible topic. It's super boring. It turned out that people enjoy reading it, which is a surprise to me until today. But that's also how I landed here on this
Exactly.
episode with you.
Exactly, yeah, because you are really active on LinkedIn, making some good content on Kappa. What is Kappa? What is not a Kappa? I like your post where Kappa is this and you cross them all, etc. Or Kappa. I mean, Kappa is a topic that is really interesting, but also that makes a lot of people that scares a lot of people. So it's also the thing. I mean, I work with manufacturers and with the departments, and yeah, we want as a quality department to open CAPAs, but everybody else don't want to open CAPAs. So it's like this fight of who will be winning. So yeah, mainly the idea of today is really to make more about this topic about CAPA and explain that. Can you just explain more about your background, who you are exactly, what you have done in your career?
Sure. I'm a biomedical engineer. So I started to work in consultancy first, which is a horrible introduction to work life, by the way.
Yeah, agree.
um, I bared it for 3 years. So I had my dual education studying biomedical engineering. And when I was not studying, I was working with clients, especially in Switzerland and Austria or Germany. After 3 years, my wife and I decided to stop doing that, and I started to work at Johnson and Johnson back then in the laboratory environment, having a project lead role, rolling out strategic programs, initiatives, things like that. But I've had it with regulated industry after 5 or 6 years in total. Before my studies, I was already working in the automotive industry in quality control. I was sitting at the 100% inspection. So it was like a wooden box. It was black painted in the middle, and I was doing like the painting check with an UV lamp, right? And from there, I went to the studies, and then Johnson Johnson, and then I said, I've had it. I need to do something different, and I moved into the startup world, actually selling software. And after 2 years, I said, okay, medical devices is where I feel home. So I moved back into the industry.
No, I think it's
Now,
a great a great journey, and yeah, I mean, as you said at the beginning, it's horrible to start from consulting because you arrive there without too much experience, if I can say, with the
yeah,
industry, and but you have to start somewhere. So, but it's good.
yeah.
Um, okay, so and maybe just a quick story about you are really working on Kappa every day, I think, huh?
Yeah, I have the benefit that I can spend my whole day on CAPA related topics. I know that not everyone has this luxury. Let me phrase it like that. So if you read my content, I think you have the feeling that I enjoy and seeing CAPA management. And actually, I do it. But coming from consultancy, working at different companies, and also many people write me DMs on LinkedIn. I know that not everyone can only do NC and CAPA, right? They have their regulatory affairs job, they do the internal audits too, and they do the batch releases and controls, and they support the manufacturing and the complaint handling, right? Like NC and CAPA is 3% of their daily tasks, maybe. For me, it's different. Since many years I was always involved in NC and CAPA management. So even back in the consultancy, one of my first projects was to support on an external audit report. And this is where I've seen the human error for the first time.
Okay.
It was actually a smaller company and one person doing all of the quality management. And they had 6 or 7 findings. And in the CAPA plan, this person wrote himself in. I was the error because I didn't know how to execute the regulations. I was not aware of the regulations. And the corrective action was always retraining. Verification was always I was retrained. Right. This was my first interaction with CAPA. Moving to Johnson & Johnson, it was obviously different. Johnson & Johnson, huge company, very mature, a lot of governance modules from local to global. And here I learned, let's say, how to do NC and CAPA. I had the fortunate finding or situation that I had a mentor who was really experienced with NC and CAPA. And this person could teach me a lot of the things. And that's now also a way of giving back. Many of the things which I talk about is also from this person originally. And he even got it from a different person, right? It always goes in rounds. Since I'm in my current role, I focus mainly on strategic improvement in terms of CAPA. So really dissecting the CAPA program overall. So for the most people, CAPA is only, I have a finding, I want to close the CAPA. For me, it's how does the program work? So it means how do we enable a site to identify potential quality events, which they then trigger to CAPA? How do we ensure that they have a nice CAPA record, means good problem statements, good investigations, good closures, and overall, how do we have good governance models, good KPIs to understand where we need to adapt or improve things, right? So my role related to NC CAPA is completely different than most of the people who read my content.
Unearth the pulse of the medtech world with MedTech Conf, a dynamic platform featuring global events on medical devices, biologicals, IVD, and pharmaceuticals. Stay informed, stay ahead, connect, share, and elevate your knowledge. Become an official sponsor. Make your event shine on the map. MedTech Conf, your key to the medtech universe. Remember, the future is now, and it's at your fingertips with MedTech Conf.
Exactly, yeah. So, and when you talked about Johnson Johnson, so I was also part of Johnson Johnson, and yeah, I also learned a lot there about Kappa and C. I was part of some companies that had some warning letters, so we had really to learn correctly
Yeah,
how to do that. So,
can imagine.
so you had to educate yourself first, then you had to educate everybody that has to open or read or create a Kappa, etc. So it has be harmonized, if I can say, or standardized, that everybody has to do it the same way, answer the same question, do the same thing. So it was, but it was really helpful a lot, as you said, to also educate outside of Johnson and Johnson for other companies. But yeah, it's how also, as I've said, you learn, you have your journey, your career, and you make your mistakes, and then you get there.
Sure.
We talked a bit about Kappa, but can we come back and maybe for somebody that is listening now and he says, what is this Kappa? What are we talking about? Can you just maybe clarify again, what is a Kappa, maybe for you on your own words?
Yeah. For the own words, from my point of view, the CAPA process is the strongest process for identifying root causes and addressing them, right? So the idea is that in the ideal world, your CAPA system or CAPA process will only handle with high systemic issues or unacceptable risk issues or systemic issues. They go into the CAPA process, you identify the causes, so the root causes, and you address them via corrective action, plus you prove that the actions have been effective. If I give a real life example, imagine you're a person and you're overweight and you jump into a strict training regimen, you have a strict diet, and you shed off 20 kilos. But if you don't address the causes, you will gain them back, right?
Yeah.
Because diet is 8 weeks, the training maybe after half a year, you stop training and then you get everything back. And this traditional correction part is usually managed under nonconformity. I don't want to go too deep into
Yeah.
that, but let's keep it high level. If you go into CAPA, you want to understand the root causes. So why am I overweight? I see that, okay, I didn't incorporate movement into my life. I'm sitting all day at the office. I'm only eating junk food. And the way to address, so first of all, you identify those causes and then you address them. So you change your diet in a sustainable way so that it's diet for life. You start to walk your 10,000 steps a day, every day, and you go to the gym twice a week. And by that, you have tackled the root causes. You keep the weight off. And so you also verified that your actions have been effective because you keep the weight off.
Exactly. I like really this analogy because, yeah, it's true that if you just correct and not really address the root cause, you go back to your problems. And it's what we have also when we have a repeat of the issues after we have closed our CAPA. It's why we have also normally this effectiveness monitoring to check that, yes, we have addressed that correctly. And after a certain period, the issue is not happening again. But yeah. So you are, as I've said, really an expert on CAPA, and you are eating CAPA, drinking CAPA, living CAPA all the
There it
days.
is.
Exactly. So within your experience now, as I said at the beginning, so I wanted you to, and you gave me a list of maybe 20 issues.
Yeah.
I told you, no, I did three only because we don't make an episode of 2 hours. So three main issues about CAPAs. So can we start with maybe your first top one issue that you have about CAPA? And maybe the objective is not just to tell what is the issue, is also to maybe provide some kind of solutions or best practice or for people that are seeing also this issue. Because I'm sure, because I read them, I'm sure that a lot of people are also having the same type of issue. So what is your top one CAPA issue that you can report here?
Yeah. Can I say two things in the beginning?
Yeah.
So the first is there's a reason why I picked those three, well, the top three. And it's that from my point of view, if you solve those three, you will prevent a lot of other findings, right? And it's my personal top three list. If you look at the 483s, for example, then you see, okay, verification of effectiveness is forgotten, or people don't follow up in timely manner, or analysis is not deep enough, right? Those are all valid issues. But with my top three, I think if you get those things right, then you already will solve 80% of the other issues.
Exactly,
right?
the Pareto here.
yeah. At least into that direction.
Exactly.
It's too complicated to say we only solve three issues and then everything is fine, right? Nuances and details matter, but let's go back to the top three issues because I don't want to bore you for 6 hours.
No, it's fine.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so the issues I picked for this episode today is, first of all, I see that companies don't really know when to escalate to the CAPA system.
Yeah.
So it's that the CAPA triggers are vague, ambiguous, or unclear. The second one is that CAPA owner, so the person responsible to set up the CAPA record, doesn't really know how to formulate the problem statement and set up the CAPA scope or CAPA bounding so they can solve the issue. And the third one is that if they are in investigation, they have a hard time separating symptoms and contributing factors from root causes.
Okay. So let's go for the first one. Then when to escalate a CAPA? Because, yeah, we have multiple tools. We have the NC, we have the internal audit, we have management reviews, we have all those things. And there are people that say, oh, should I separate all those things? Or no, there is this thing, but at the end it has to go to CAPA, or should I always go to CAPA, or should I stop? I mean,
yeah.
I heard a lot of things. So yeah, it's good that we have maybe this first one because yes, it is something that a lot of people are seeing.
Yeah. And I think that's also one of the most difficult challenges to solve because there is no cookie cutter answer here. It's dependent on the company, on the risk of the product, how mature the QMS is, how mature data quality analysis is, all of that. What I usually see as, I call it industry best practice, is that they separate it into single events, CAPA escalation. So it means independent, that occurrence is n equal 1, they will escalate to CAPA. And the other category is trending related, breach of thresholds. For the single events, most companies are totally clear that if you have a patient injury or patient death with your product, so it's usually coming from the complaint handling system, you will escalate to CAPA, right? No questions. If you have external audit findings, you might say that I don't want to follow it up via CAPA, but your notified body usually expects a CAPA plan, right? So
Exactly.
you will escalate that into CAPA. Same with regulatory authority finding or observation. If you're with FDA and you have a VAI or an MAI, so voluntary action intended or mandatory action intended, and even for no action intended, they kind of expect that next time when they come, the finding was handled via CAPA, right?
Exactly.
So there are few single events where it's clearer that you need to escalate a CAPA. And then the part about the trending, this is really about, I have my process. This is the usual way of how my process rates behave themselves. But if something breaches a alarming limit or like an action limit threshold, then I need to escalate the CAPA, right? Going 2 steps back, I think the easiest, or let's say a simple way forward, is to be clear on what are your feeding systems and the feeding processes in your company. For the big ones, you can look at the ISO 13485 or maybe also at the QSR, so the FDA regulations. You have internal audit, you have your complaint handling, you have external audit, of course, you have your production control, the control of non-conforming product. So you can really go through that and then think about the 2 categories I just mentioned. What single events in this source system or feeding system would go directly to CAPA? Not a lot of questions asked related to, do we really need to accept it or do we don't need to accept it? Those things go straight to CAPA. Like I said, complaint handling, patient died, stop questioning, go to CAPA.
High risk, anything high risk is
Yeah.
really has to be considered like CAPA, to open a CAPA directly.
Yeah, or unacceptable risk. So the thing with high risk is that sometimes you have products, the usage of the product is associated with a high risk, but the risk benefit ratio is so high that you are willing to accept the high risk, right?
Yeah.
If you have this defibrillator, sometimes you have burnings after usage. It's a high risk to have a burn, but if you don't use it, the patient might die, right? So you would accept the high risk here
Exactly.
at that end. Yeah, that's that one. But for the trending stuff, this is now really dependent on the maturity of the company. So if you look at your control of non-conforming product, not every non-conforming product is immediately a CAPA, right? So let's say you have a part, it's 7 centimeters long. It should be 6 centimeters according to specification. It's only one part. Most likely you will go into the NC investigations part, not the deep dive investigation, but I want to understand what happens, what I need to do for disposition. You would say, I will cut it down to 6 centimeters and that's it. It was one time out of a million. You won't do a CAPA for that, right? It's a different story if it's, let's say, a mid-level risk associated with a high occurrence, right? Because then it will stress your system potentially so much that it will go into the final device, right? And the final inspection won't see that it was a wrong part, and then it goes to the customer, most likely will result into a complaint. And this is harder to do because you need to look at your retrospective data. You need to come up with meaningful thresholds and yield rates, also for complaint handling. If you have a certain complaint type, let's say, you have signals and you want to understand when do I act, when not. This is where I see that a lot of discussion with the company is required, right? With everyone, with the functional leads, with quality, people who understand their process, but also the product and associated risks.
Exactly. And so this rule for escalation to CAPA, I think should be really clear also for everybody on the procedures, explaining clearly what you consider to escalate, what not. The fact that there is also this gray area that you have also to define. In that case, we don't do that, but we justify it also inside maybe the NC or whatever. So this is not, because when you say it, it's clear, but if it's not written, you may have somebody that assumes something and somebody else that assumes something else. So you say, "Oh no, I will not escalate it because it's fine, it's okay, etc., etc." But if it's clearly written, I think it helps a lot.
Definitely. And this is related to two additional things. It needs to be specified, right? We're in a regulated industry. If the auditor comes or the investigator and you say, yeah, it's like that, and he asks or she asks, where is it written? You can't show anything, doesn't help, right? So it needs to be in the controlled document. The other thing is to make people aware of it. So only because it's written and you have, let's say you have a big organization, it's maybe 20,000 people and only one person knows that it's written in a procedure. Won't help you.
Exactly. No, I think it's clear. When we have a management review, for example, should also actions from management review be escalated to CAPA?
I see it often, right? So if you look at the management review and what is expected from the management review is that it looks at a lot of quality data and
Exactly.
objectives, right? And output from complaint handling performance and also CAPA performance per se. If the management decides to open up a corrective action to handle a certain area of their business, I would accept it, right? As long as it's reasonable. And that goes then back to the requirement of, does it breach anything, right? Is it really that we have an issue with that? Or is it more that someone wants to do something to initiate a project? And I had a post a month ago regarding political CAPAs.
Okay.
Luckily, I don't see it often. But in the past, and especially in consultancy, working with smaller companies, I've seen a lot of political CAPAs because it was like, hey, I don't get my project approved, so I will hide it under the guise of a CAPA, and then I will get resources and attention, all of that, right? If that's the desire of the management review, and that should be the output, I would say, please don't do it. If it's meaningful, sure, why not?
And I also saw sometimes some people that are making a management review, they have an action plan out of the management review, but they keep it inside the management review report, but not outside. So is this also something that is accepted, if I can say, or this should go to a CAPA because we have to record it somewhere? Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com.
I would pinpoint at end of the day on the process around management review. As long as a company follows their own written process and you have discussions in external audit or something like that, it's hard to argue against. We follow our own process, right? And if the management review process says in those scenarios, it's okay to stay outside of a CAPA system because it doesn't really affect patient safety or regulatory compliance. It's more like a nice to have improvement. So example is, we see that we lose a lot of money due to administrative tasks associated with, let's say, complaint handling. It's not a CAPA, right? If it's only about saving money, it's important for the business, of course, but it doesn't make the product better or life of the patient or regulatory compliance. Then I would say keep that out of the CAPA system, but follow your own process, definitely, right?
Exactly, but write it, as I said,
Write it
on the
down.
procedure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the second one. So, yeah, this is an issue also. Writing the problem statement, defining the scope of a CAPA, making a CAPA not scoped correctly, which makes it like a ever living CAPA or CAPA for life, or I don't know how you call that.
Life cycle CAPA.
Yeah.
So I think that's a strong one and one of the easiest to tackle. What I see with immature companies is that CAPA problem statements are a one-liner. So you had like finding out of external audit. Okay. Problem with product B. We found contamination, right? It's really, you read it and you have a lot of interpretation. You understand what you think, you
I
understand
mean,
what
you
it tries
understand
to
it
know.
that day because it happened that day. But
Yeah,
will you understand it 3 years after if you had to review again this
yeah,
kappa? I'm
no
not sure.
chance. Most likely no chance. And the idea of a CAPA record is that a third person could read it without a lot of questions, a lot of interpretations, right? So this is what I see often, that there are, let's say, guidelines to write a problem statement, but people just put something in there and you don't have a clue. And often you find out that it shouldn't be a kappa, right? You think it's a kappa, and then it turns out, yeah, there was a team lead and he was annoyed that his team didn't meet a productivity KPI and he wanted to have his attention, and therefore it's a kappa, right? And I think you should protect your kappa system out of those unmeaningful kappas.
I mean, it's damaging, I think, also the reputation of kappas if you are doing that, because then people, as I've said, will be really afraid of kappas and maybe will be against opening kappas in future or taking care of kappas also, because we have some people that say, oh, it's the kappas is yours. And you are, what should I do
Yes.
with that?
Yes. And what happens then is that kappa will be associated with punishment, right? It's like, oh, I'm the poor person and I just joined the company, and because I don't have a real task yet, I will get a kappa. I never did a kappa in my life. No one helps me. I just try to do things. So it's like the mix of two things, that people know better but don't follow it. And sometimes people don't know better. And how should they know if no one helps them, right? One of the easier ways to tackle that is there are problem statement frameworks you can follow. There's one, it's called 4W to H, or sometimes 5W
Yeah.
to H. There are variations on that, which is basically, what is the problem? When was it identified? Who identified it? Where was it identified? How do you know it's actually a problem? How often is it used? And there are countless variations on that, right? An example would be, due on what day is today? But let's say 1st of April, right? 1st of April 2024, a quality final inspector identified in production line A that for product B, lot 7 ABCD, there was an issue with contamination. After further investigation, it was relieved that the whole lot is affected. You have a procedure where it's written, you have product specification that you shouldn't send out product which are contaminated. How often did it happen? Only one time for a whole lot on the 1st of April. Production time is, I don't know, 30th of March until 1st of April, right? Something like that. So it's clearer what is it about. And another way to do it is also use something which is called is not analysis. So it's basically that you have your categories, and when you say product is affected, is product A, is not affected, product B, C, D. Or you do it based on lots. Lot 7 ABC is affected, lot 7 ABB is not affected, ADD is not affected, and so on and so on. You can Google those things, right? It's not a secret. That's a good way to come up with your problem statement so that you can read it and have a first idea of what the CAPA is about.
Exactly, yeah. And as I've said, writing of the header, if I can say, of the kappa,
Yeah.
is really the start of a good kappa or not. Because as you said, if you are writing that lightly and you say, oh yeah, that day something happened, something happened, what happened, I don't know, with a guy that discovered that thing, and now we are trying to correct it. I mean, at the end, it's like, what are you talking about? As you said, it's just somebody that wants to open it to just correct it, but at the end, yeah, they are not really interested about it. And you have also, as you've said, also by those kind of opening a kappa just to open a kappa to get attention. The issue with that is the fact that yes, it takes a lot of time, maybe for something that is not worth it. And you have some people that when they see that, they will say, let me correct it immediately and no need to open a kappa because I can correct it now and it's fine. It's why should I get this burden of creating a kappa, opening this, opening that? It's not worth it. So this can be also a problem of education, if I can say, of your company. Because if you are opening kappa for nothing or for really things that are not worth it, people will say, oh, it's crappy thing. They are just making it to stay alive, if I can say. They think a
Yeah.
quality department needs that to stay alive. No, not at all. But yeah. So this is a start. So if the start is not good, the rest can be also damaged, if I can say.
Yeah. And like I said in the beginning, the reason why I picked those three is you will prevent a lot of issues coming downstream. If you look at common themes in warning letters or 483s, is that the verification of effectiveness was ineffective or the investigation was not thorough enough. And then it's like, okay, if the problem statement doesn't make sense and the person doesn't really know what problem he or she tries to solve, and then they investigate something, but you try to do so much that you have a really shallow investigation, and then afterwards you don't even know how to prove it because you try to solve the whole world, so you just don't prove anything. Of course you will have issues with that, right? If you don't identify the proper root cause, your corrective actions will be ineffective. Of course your verification of effectiveness will be ineffective, right? Everything links back together to a good problem statement.
Exactly. Okay, what is the third one? So we say that separation of symptoms and potential root causes.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is always the problem of defining what is the root cause, what is the symptom, what we should do, how to correct that, how to. I mean,
yeah,
it's a mix, and sometimes
yeah,
when you are reading, you say, "But no, this should be here." And I mean, yeah, it's really
yeah,
it's difficult even for somebody that is trained if he has not the right methodology or asks the right questions, it can be yeah, difficult also.
yeah. And even for someone like me, I think I reviewed over 1,000 kappas, right? Definitely over 1,000. And if I go into the investigation session, it's still challenging for me. I still do the same mistakes. I have confirmation bias. I try to identify see trends where there are no trends because I believe the issue must be there according to my experience, right? And we are wired that way. We're a human being. We have like simplification. We have heuristics, and we make assumptions based on our experiences because they kept us alive.
So,
If you,
so it's
yeah,
more it's more like I'm sure the problem is that. So I'm not
yeah,
doing an investigation, but I will put all my effort to prove that what I'm
yeah,
I'm, I'm saying now is correct. It's mainly that.
yes, yes. And for me, it's because I've seen a lot of good kappas and a lot of effective kappas. I know what good looks like,
Okay.
right? And I can identify immediately if I see a quote unquote bad investigation summary that that's not good. Right? But it's not that I could pinpoint it and say, you need to go into that area, you need to review this data, you need to do here and there. It doesn't work like that. You go into an investigation, you assume you don't know anything, you try to make it based on objective evidence and facts, and that means you try things out, right? You try different visualizations, you have interviews with people, you look at the product if you have non-conformities kappas related to a product. It's a lot of being creative and trying to find something, and then you try to verify your assumption. So you have like a hypothesis testing, and if you can have an artificial environment and you see that the issue happens, then you're a little bit happy because you think, oh, might be that one. Yeah.
Exactly. So is there maybe some questions or some methodology to go on the right direction here, or something that you say if you do it on that way, or if you ask yourself this question, or if you maybe there are some methodologies that are existing, if you follow that, 90% of chance that you are making it correctly.
Yeah. Let me say one controversial thing first,
Okay.
because most people say use Ishikawa or
Yeah,
5Y, right?
exactly.
And I say don't use it alone.
Okay.
Don't, right? I think it's like something that book smart persons read one time about Ishikawa, tried it for one time, maybe if they're lucky, and then they say, of course, it's just Ishikawa or 5 Ys. First of all, it doesn't work like that. Ishikawa is a brainstorming tool,
Exactly.
right? It's to come up with potential root causes. But there are steps before to identify my potential areas where root causes might be. There are steps after the Ishikawa to say this thing is worth to follow up, or no, I will scrap it, definitely not relevant. And even if you say from your brainstorming in the Ishikawa, you had 10 potential root causes, you scoped it down to 2. And now if you try to use 5 whys on those 2 remaining root causes, even that is challenging, because dependent on the people who are in the team, what type of questions they ask, they might come to a completely different outcome, right? So what can we do to make that more standardized? I think we should look at the investigation like a sub-process of CAPA, right?
Okay.
There are certain steps required in the investigation, and in the beginning it's information gathering. So what process is it? What is the product? What's the product specification? Do I have data related to the production process? Can I interview people and ask them about this issue? Were they aware about the requirements of the process? So things like that. There's a lot of groundwork required before you go into the Ishikawa, right? You collect as much data as possible. After that, you can have a brainstorming session, which is basically Ishikawa's brainstorming. It only helps you to come up with new areas to find ideas. But how you map the potential areas to the category, what categories you have, end of day, it doesn't matter too much, because it's a brainstorming tool which will help you to come up with new ideas. And now if you look at those potential root causes, ideally you will have an action plan to confirm or reject this potential non-conform root cause, right? So it means if your potential root cause is under, let's say, procedure was inadequate, not proper instructions, you need to have an action now, a step to confirm, is this really the case or not? What would be a good step is to look into the procedure and look it up. And then you look in the procedure, and if it's under 3A, it's written, if you have product A, you need to measure it from end to back. It's not a potential root cause anymore. You can scrap it off. That's not it, right? And this is what so this level of nuance and details is often left out if someone says, use Ishikawa in 5 whys. And I won't even go into 5 whys. So I'm personally not the biggest fan of 5 whys, because it's always dependent on how exactly you ask. You can always steer the direction, right?
Exactly.
You could say, why did the person not follow the procedure? You could then ask, why was there no point of detection of the process? You could say, why was the person not trained, right? So it's not that
It's also
ideal.
biased, I think, as you said.
Yeah.
You can go in the direction that you want as soon as you
Yeah.
have this assumption. Oh, the problem is that. So let me ask all those 4, 5, 6, 7 questions, and at the end, I will arrive to the same to the same
Yeah.
way. So I listen to you, and all this is interesting. Now I have a challenging question.
Yeah.
So when we are part of a big corporate company, I think it can be fine, all this, because you have a lot of team of people that are working with you, etc. What about a startup or somebody that is really alone, as you said, maybe yourself, that we are a company and you are one guy that is running quality, and he has to find a root cause and to make a root cause analysis or find some kind of symptoms for the kappa. Can he do the Ishikawa alone? Can he do the 5 whys alone? Can he do all these things alone to find what are the solutions and then impose his actions to the team? Or, I mean, what would you recommend to those people that are feeling alone? Because I hear them now when they are saying, oh, it's good making a brainstorming, but I'm alone. How can I do a brainstorming alone?
Yeah. I mean, if you're the smartest and best person of the world, you can do it, of course. No. It's one of the common issues you can identify immediately. If you look at a CAPA record and it's one person, you can scrap everything. You can just say, hey, the likability is so low that you found the root cause, go back, right? So especially for small companies where there's one person or two persons in the quality management team, those companies need to understand what's their role with CAPA. And usually it's to help the functional owner to navigate the CAPA methodology. This is my interpretation, right? Other people might view it differently, but my idea of how quality helps with CAPA, if they don't have a CAPA on the quality management system, right? Then it's a different story. But let's say there's a CAPA, it's from manufacturing. The role of the quality team, from my point of view, should be to guide and help the people, that they follow the methodology, that they have a documentation which is audit proof, that they follow regulatory requirements, things like that, right? But the expertise is definitely in the function. You as a quality person, you don't have enough context to understand what is the right thing to do, right? So if you're someone who just thinks, yeah, that was the finding, and of course Georg did it, and Georg is so stupid, he's never trained and he never remembers, we have a retraining, and then that he was trained is then the effectiveness. It's not the right way to go. So the best practice is to, yes, you're one person of the quality, out of the quality department, you say, hey, I don't know, Munir, you're in production, you're responsible for production, you should be interested in solving this issue. So give me a team lead name. So something who has also a level of authority, right, to drive this forward. And then you can sit together with them, look at the problem statement, get their in-depth expertise. Because sometimes they also say, no, that's not a problem. It's not like that. It doesn't matter for the product. But you thought it matters, but you don't have the context, right? So you do it together with them, you invite them for the brainstorming sessions. You can help them to document it and keep it compliant, but the content, how it's filled out, should come mainly from the functional area.
And I think if you are doing that, because I saw a lot of people that are not doing that, they are imposing solutions and imposing their actions. If you are doing that, they decided about those actions, they decided about the solution. So most likely they will implement it correctly, because it's not like somebody came and said, do this, do that. It's more like I think after our investigation, we find out that this is maybe the solution. Let's implement it. Maybe they are wrong, but as we said, we have the effectiveness monitoring after. We'll check, and if you are wrong, then we come back and we reinvestigate and we redo the work. But doing this, involving all the functions, is key. If you cannot do that, I think your system is failing already.
Yeah, and it links also to quality culture, and also, let's say, the culture of your overall company. I worked in companies where you're punished for errors. And what is the logical consequence? That people will hide their errors, right?
Exactly.
It's not that they will improve, they will hide, they won't communicate anything. They will say, oh no, it's a red metric, we can't communicate a red metric, make it yellow. And the level upper will say, oh no, we can't. To the top management, yellow, no, make it green, right? And the top management doesn't have a clue.
Watermelon effect, yeah. It's green outside, red inside. So yeah.
Yeah, melon KPI. Yeah, and so it's so important for the top management to foster and create an environment where people are not afraid to speak up and owning their own errors, and where they are rewarded for solving problems, right? That's the cool thing about CAPA. If you do it properly, you solve a problem, right? You solve the problem of people. And what you said with, if there's someone from outside, so I come, hey, I identified the issue and you're dumb and you did that, and this is the action, do it until tomorrow. I wouldn't work on that myself. It's a different thing if you're invested and, hey, Munir, and come, you're so annoyed about that issue yourself. We have now a CAPA for that. Let's use it. Let's solve the issue. And you get a good feeling if it works, right? And this links back to good company culture and good quality culture. If your management and your team leaders are fostering it and also rewarding it, then it's fun to work on CAPA. But if it's just like you have your 120% job in the first place, on top you get the CAPA. By the way, the CAPA is already aging because the person working on it left the company 3 months ago. It's your task. You're immediately in CAPA review boards because you have a late CAPA, and you say, what the heck? I'm seeing this CAPA for the first time today. How am I already on a list?
Exactly. I think a lot of people that are listening that feel the pain, like I said, because they know about it. No, I think it's great. And I think I said all the advice. I would give the same advice because I also feel all this myself, and it is difficult. So it's why you should really try your best to follow, if I can say this, and engage with people and not do everything alone, etc. Because otherwise you'll fail already. Okay, so thank you, George, for all this. Where people can follow up with you if they want maybe to to see more about your content or maybe ask you questions about CAPAs.
Yeah, the easiest way, of course, is LinkedIn. Maybe you can just post my
I'll put that
handle.
on the show notes exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna run a free webinar soon on root cause investigation. I have a link to sign up. I can also
Yeah, you
copy
send
it.
that to me and I will put that
Yeah,
also on the show notes. Yeah.
yeah. This is something I promised my readers since so long. I'm finally sitting down and think about the webinar and the concept. That's one thing. Yeah, those are
Great.
the two things right now.
So I will put everything on the show notes, so don't hesitate to go there. I will also put previous episode we have done on CAPAs, like with Vincent Cafizo, with also Caroline Di Badwal. So we have done few episodes. So I hope with all that you can have, if I can say, a good listening about CAPAs and make the best out of CAPAs. And then yeah, and anyway, if you have other problems that you want maybe to solve about CAPAs, don't hesitate, send that to me or send your questions to me, and I will maybe again contact George to maybe tackle this new problem. Say how you will solve that, George. Okay, so George, thank you very much for all your information and all the details that you provide today, and I hope that it will be helpful for a lot of people, and I wish you a nice day.
Thanks, Maria. Same to you. Thank you for the time.
Bye bye.
Bye.